I will hold my breath. When I'm stressed, I
Really?
hold it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing. I've been hearing more and more about the power and the importance of people doing breath work.
Box breathing is proven to reduce hypertension. Blood pressure is a big issue for our patients that have obstructive sleep apnea. If you have an airway issue, your blood pressure is going to start rising. You get too young in life. And it is really important to understand how breathing affects your blood pressure and your stress levels, and just to take a minute to decompress. Box breathing was new to my life the last probably like 5 or 6 years, and it's an incredible tool people can use. It's free. You can YouTube how to do it and just start helping yourself to be getting enough air in throughout the day.
Dr. Kalli Hale is passionate about how our teeth affect our systemic health. Her training in obstructive sleep apnea has transformed both her personal and professional career. Dr. Hale is a clinical advocate for Vivos Therapeutics and works with dentists around the country to develop clinical protocols for the treatment of mild to moderate obstructive sleep apnea and sleep disordered breathing. Her work in pediatric expansion and sleep disordered breathing catapulted her career, and she lives by the slogan, "We have to stop getting it wrong for our kids." She is faculty for the Dental Success Network and is proud to be a founder and chief dental officer for Tooth Pillow. Ladies, I'm so excited for you to check out this episode with my friend, Dr. Kalli Hale. Welcome to the Story Project podcast. I am your host, Joanna Scott, and I'm thrilled to have Dr. Kalli Hale with me today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I have been looking forward to this for weeks.
Good. Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm thrilled to have you as my guest. It's definitely long overdue. I met you, I believe, a few years ago at the Delivering Wow Summit in Jamaica.
Yes.
And because I think Josh had probably met you prior to that somehow.
Yeah, I feel like we had, but I didn't meet you till then. And I was like, I love your wife.
So that was really fun to meet you there. And then I also had my kids. And I have to say, Aaliyah to this day, my daughter, still remembers you and had this like fondness for you. And she has, to this day, she'll say like, well, if you want me to work on my airway stuff and my mouth breathing and everything, I need to go to Texas to see Dr.
Oh my gosh, I love her. That's so sweet. Please give her a huge hug for me and tell her I remember her very well.
I will. Well, you definitely made a lasting impression for sure. Before we dive into this episode, I always like to do a few kind of icebreaker tabletop questions. Have you seen these?
You have so fun. No.
They're
no. Yeah. Okay.
So like if you're
so excited
at dinner with your family or kids or whatever, and they're just kind of looking at you like, oh, can I leave?
Yeah.
You could pull these out and then just kind of start.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay. I can't wait. This is fun.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite thing to do that's free?
Honestly, hang out in my backyard with my kids. Just be able to be home and watch them play, and just like nobody's texting me, nothing is happening except me just soaking in their little cute bodies and laughter and all of that happening in the backyard.
I love that. How old are they again?
9, 7, and 5, and they're all about to have birthdays all at once, and they are going to be 10, 6, and 8. It's like it's too fast for me.
Oh, that's awesome. They're so little. I mean, to me,
they are. I know.
Those are fun years. Okay. What's your best home remedy?
Oh my gosh, I can get stains out of anything. Okay. Anything. Okay. By using, I can't believe this is the thing I just like had to say. Okay. So the ratios don't matter, but you use peroxide, baking soda, and Dawn dish soap. Oh. Anything. It will be white and perfect. And you just little baking soda, little peroxide, little Dawn, mix it up, let it sit on there. Voila, you're welcome.
Okay. That is amazing. I'm making a mental note. I'm going to try that. Okay. If you could receive a bouquet of any flowers, what would it be?
Big lilies, white probably. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes. Okay. Which food item is guaranteed to be stocked in your house?
Coffee. Coffee is definitely like heavy whipping cream. I use just plain heavy cream in my coffee to like avoid sugar and get a little bit of like fat in my keto coffee. Yeah, girl, it's going to be coffee. It's going to be coffee.
Awesome. I love that.
Terrible, right? I was like, I feel guilty as it's coming out of my mouth, but we
I
will have
know.
coffee in this
No,
house.
don't feel guilty. I would say chips are what's most stocked over
Oh,
here.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, like
You need that
all
crunchy
gluten-free,
snack.
but chips.
Of course. Yes.
So,
I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah, I'm a
Totally.
celiac girl, so I for years and years now I had to back off because I was like, okay, doing like a
Yeah.
bag a night, and because I
Yes.
don't do sugar and just it was just kind of
Yes.
thing. And
Yeah.
so I might have passed that on to my kids, unfortunately. So
It's like a, end of day like
yeah,
crunch you need.
yes,
Yeah. There's worse things. Okay. There's
there,
worse things that
yes,
you could do.
there probably are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well that was fun.
Well,
All
those
right.
were so fun.
I know. Yeah, I definitely encourage our audience go to you can get these on Amazon, but Table Topics, and they're so interesting. They have like different varieties of them too. So they're
Yeah.
fun.
Fun. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right, we have plenty to dive into. I wanted to talk about one fun similarity between us. We're both obviously women, mothers with very full careers, I would say. Would you agree with me, Kelly?
Yes. 100%.
I thought it would be helpful that we discuss the power of oxygen and breathing properly and its impact on our sleep as, humans, mothers, also our children. And then
Yep.
secondly, I want to dive into the power of oxygen metaphorically in our day-to-day
Mm,
lives. I feel the two
yeah.
can really connect here, and you are the perfect person to have
Absolutely.
this conversation. Um,
Yeah. I
I
would love to.
Okay, sweet. I mean, I read recently that 7 out of 10 people are currently living in a chronic state of stress, which means that our
Mhm.
bodies are like locked into, fight or flight all the time. And obviously,
Yep.
this can lead to burnout. And this audience of women and mothers is all too familiar with the cyclical nature of falling in and out of survival mode. So
Right.
I believe this conversation is going to be very helpful, impactful, and just relevant to
Yeah.
our ladies listening.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive in, and I want to talk first about the power of oxygen in our physical bodies. So, when it comes to breathing, why is breathing properly, especially during sleep, so vital to our overall health?
Yeah, I could talk for hours on this. I'm
Yeah.
so excited about this whole paragraph that we're about to do. I mean, oxygen's critical. You can't live without it. So, and there is not a single organ in your body that is not stressed if you don't have oxygen.
Mhm.
So, I mean, literally, when I say I live, eat, and breathe what I do for a living, it's
Yeah.
literally true because not only do I need it, but the patients that I'm seeing that are suffering so much do. And just the whole kind of array of stages in life that you described in that first question. I remember being a dental student, not sleeping as much as I should. I remember being a mother on maternity leave and having to go back to work. And your brain requires oxygen. You will not survive without oxygen. A couple of minutes and that's it. And you're on to the next phase in the world. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that if you're, like you just said, living in a constant state of fight or flight because your cortisol is high, which boosts your insulin, and then you've got blood glucose dysregulation and obesity. And at the same time, you go to sleep and you stop breathing multiple times per hour because you have an airway problem. You have an actual physical obstructive sleep apnea happening while you're sleeping. It only exacerbates that. So now, not only is your day awful and your constant ability really to react well in stress, react well to your family, your coworkers, if you're a leader in your organization, if you're a manager, your overall ability to control yourself is harmed during the day because of your life and maybe a lack of boundaries or whatever it is, wherever you are in your journey. Then you go to sleep and you don't recover because you're not getting enough oxygen while you're sleeping. You are in a like hamster wheel that you need to get out of.
Recently, I had somebody, it's just a little off script, but just I've been hearing more and more about the power and the importance of people doing like breath work. And so,
Yes.
yeah, and this one guy, he's a DJ, he was telling me about it, and he's had a coach like walk him through it. So now every morning he has this, ritual of breath work and so it was box breathing and all of this stuff. I personally find myself so something I'm working on, I will hold my breath. When I'm stressed, I
Really?
hold it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing. So I just wondered if you really love kind of the
Absolutely.
okay.
Yes. Yeah. Box breathing is proven to reduce hypertension. And hypertension is a whole different tangent. It's not as fun to talk about high blood pressure, but blood pressure is a big issue for our patients that have obstructive sleep apnea. If you have an airway issue, your blood pressure is going to start rising. You get too young in life. And it is really important to understand how breathing affects your blood pressure and your stress levels, and just to take a minute to decompress. That wasn't a thing for me. Like I wasn't raised in a house that like I had a wonderful childhood. I love my parents dearly. We weren't like meditating or like box breathing. It was just like, yeah. I had some incredible role models for how I was going to be successful in my life and how to get there. But it was definitely just like this consistent, you do whatever it takes to get where you need to go. And then making it, but then getting out, you have different stresses like business ownership and whatever. So the idea of how can I just step back, work on myself a little bit, because if I don't have me, I certainly can't lead a team of multiple locations. Yeah. It was just a very foreign concept. So box breathing was new to my life the last probably like 5 or 6 years. And it's an incredible tool people can use. It's free. You can YouTube how to do it and just start helping yourself to be getting enough air in throughout the day.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our kiddos and their airways. What signs should we as parents, as moms, be looking for that might indicate that our child has, breathing issues at night, sleeping issues? What are those specific things we should be looking for?
Yeah, I have like my top 5. If your child ever snores, if they're ever being told, if the dentist is telling you they're grinding their teeth, if you can hear them grinding their teeth at night, you need to be concerned that they're having pauses in breathing, like actual apneas. Mouth breathing. Oh, my kid just has allergies. We get told that a lot. And usually by that time, the tonsils and adenoids are so inflamed that they're just a chronic mouth breather, and they're trying all these like sprays or whatever to try to get to the bottom of it, but they don't understand that the jaws themselves are actually underdeveloped. So those are some of the really big ones. Bedwetting. Bedwetting is a hot topic for kids obviously outside of the age that it would be appropriate. And that is not linked to going to an airway dentist. Like, you don't think as a mom, like, your kid's wetting the bed, I need to go to the dentist. That just doesn't like compute. So those are some of the really big ones. It's also it changes a little bit based on age. So I would say really young kids, the 3, 4, 5 age, are just going to be very irritable, very hyperactive, acting out, maybe hitting, biting, whatever. Like a child that's just struggling to regulate is the way I like to think about it. Like, we learn our regulatory abilities really from our parents as we're getting bigger. And when they're really little like that, and that's happening, and these poor moms will come in and see me, and they're young and they're exhausted and they're like, what is happening? Like, this is not what I thought motherhood was going to be like. And then we find a lot of things behind the curtain, the lips, to see what is going on with their jaw growth and development. So those are some of the really big things. I think for adults listening to this, like if you wear a night guard or you're told you grind your teeth, like you need a sleep study. Like I can't, I lose my patience pretty quickly now with the amount of data and literatures out there showing that bruxism, which is tooth grinding, is actually sleep apnea. So we need to make sure that these patients are being screened properly, and that if they do need a quote night guard, that it's actually one that's meant to help open their airway at the same time. So I get really particular about that. Other things I would say women especially, your sleep study might not come back that bad. I just want to like validate anybody that's like, oh, I went and got one and they said mine was fine and it wasn't a problem. Women typically will not desaturate as badly as men. And our apneas won't be maybe even high enough for insurance to care, which don't even get me on that soapbox, but they might not be high enough for people to care, but you're waking up a ton.
Yes.
So you are struggling to breathe, but your body's doing what it's meant to do, which is to save your life and make you wake up and breathe. So any women that I've treated, any patient, doesn't matter gender, but that has come in and said, well, I've had a sleep study and they told me it was fine. I've always said, I want to see it. Because as soon as I get a copy of the report, I'm like, there's nothing in here that screams you're fine, like at all. And they're so frustrated. But the fact of the matter is medicine really can only provide a CPAP, which most people don't want anyway. And so if your numbers really aren't high enough, they're like, oh, well, you're probably not going to wear it anyway. We'll just move on to the next patient. And on you go, instead of suggesting an orthodontic review, an airway review by somebody who's qualified to treat it. So those, I think, for adults, fatigue, even to hypothyroid. Okay. Again, there's not an organ that's not damaged by hypoxia. So for the adults, I would say tooth grinding, snoring for sure, a lot of daytime fatigue. And the little kids, it's different.
Yeah. And just a side note, I was thinking about as you were sharing, what about women in perimenopause or menopause? The sleep disruption when, I am in my late 40s now. So the sleep disruption has like kind of, gone through the roof the past few years. And I am, working on different solutions and getting creative and reading all the books and following Dr. Mary Claire Haver and all
Good.
the
Yes,
movies that are like really revolutionizing what menopause is and awareness in the medical community, which I believe is so powerful.
absolutely.
I just wondered if you could speak to, have you noticed in all of your work, where that is an actual trend?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so important, especially for any dentists that are listening to this, to know that if your patient has sleep apnea, obviously that needs to be treated. Typically, by the time I see them and they're in a premenopausal or menopausal state, their sleep's been bad for a long time. Like there's been other things, weight gain, which only exacerbates the obstructive sleep apnea. And they haven't gone to they haven't seen a doctor or a functional nurse practitioner, or anybody to check their hormones. And that's something that I talk about right away. Not that I want everybody on hormone therapy. Like it's not about that. It's just go see somebody that can make sure that your hormone levels are appropriate so that I'm not chasing a lack of deep sleep with an appliance when it could be hormone related. And especially if their sleep test really does come back normal. Most
Yeah.
of the time it doesn't. And I do think in order for them to be successful in controlling weight and blood glucose dysregulation, we have to make sure that they aren't going in fight or flight mode while they're sleeping. That is first and foremost. The hormones need to improve. But what we can control as their dentist is making sure that they don't stop breathing multiple times an hour, because that's working against everything. No supplement on earth can overcome hypoxia. It just cannot. Like your body is going to just attack and wake you up, and that adrenaline and that hormone and cortisol and insulin process is going to happen. So I want to make sure that their airway is protected while they're sleeping so that the rest of the bodily symptoms can improve with the help of whoever else that I'm working with. So sometimes they'll get disappointed that their sleep test is normal. And it's like, obviously, it's my job to identify when it's not, and with the help of the sleep physician, and know that it, when they need to be treated, when they don't. But it's a matter of checking things off the list as well. So I'm like, I know you wanted this to be, me to tell you, I'm going to help you and this is going to be the end all be all. But there's something else that's working against this, but at least it's something you can check off the list. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's obstructive sleep apnea that they, didn't know they've had since, in my professional opinion, a child. And, it's finally caught up to them, and they were a mom and they're busy and they're working, and like their kids go off to college, and now they're just like, okay, hey, I'm still here. I'm like a ball of yarn in the corner. Can somebody help me,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so fascinating. And okay, so my takeaway is check your hormones because hormone disruption can also probably
Affect sleep.
absolutely affect your sleep. And then that can also skew maybe some of the data you're pulling from a sleep study.
Absolutely. For
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. One thing I wanted to mention, so my daughter is 15 years old. She doesn't listen to this podcast, thank God. So it's fine that I share.
Oh,
She'd be like,
okay.
Mom. So her journey with sleep has been really interesting. And I wanted to just, kind of run a little bit of her story by you. She started off years ago in a Vivo sleep appliance, and then she moved on to a Healthy Start appliance with a local ortho in our area. The reason she started this journey was because I went in and she was tired all the time. Her bed was super messy. And then I went in and took a photo of her and found her multiple nights mouth breathing. So thankfully, working with dentists, it's such a
Yeah.
right? We're such a wonderful community to learn so much and things that, can empower us even as non-clinicians to help our kiddos. So my issue right now is she hates her Healthy Start appliance because it's so big and just is like, Mom, and I don't want to, wear this. And so she pretty much is just refusing. And she's 15, almost 15. And so that's,
Totally.
yeah, I feel a little bit stuck with her. And I also know that she's definitely having sleep issues. And so, what do we do when we're dealing with teenagers who maybe didn't,
Yeah, totally.
you kind of feel
Yeah.
stuck. Yeah.
So in the teenage range, and 15 being kind of at the top age of or range of that, I really am using expanders. I'm using like actual, whether they can take them out or they're glued in, expanders just to have something more specifically focused on, custom jaw expansion. And as long as she's had that, if she's breathing through her nose now, it's done its job. And without, directly seeing her case, it's a little bit tricky, but I know between the ages of 13, 14, 15, I'm using a habit corrector appliance, whatever brand, every single time I'm doing expanders to ensure that we have made it to that minimum width of the arch that I want for them to have. And typically by 13, if they've been an appliance like that successfully for years, the teeth are beautiful. And so it's just a matter of making sure that the nasal passage is developed properly, because the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. So I'll do a cone beam to assess, like, if she's still having sleep issues, like if she's still mouth breathing or having apnea, like what's wrong with her nose? Like, or is she tongue tied? Does she need biofunctional therapy? It's very much like, and I know you've seen The Best of People, but it's a full sort of evaluation, because at 15, I'm either putting in expanders or we're doing aligners right away, like to make sure that I get as much expansion as possible, while they're on that tail end of their growth.
Okay. That's really
helpful.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just take her and we'll come see you in Texas.
You should bring her. Oh my gosh, I would love it. Yeah, I've been opening these practices called the Airway Dentist, and they're so much fun. And she could take some selfies in front of our murals, and it would be really cool, actually. So let me know.
She's a little force to be reckoned with, and I'm very proud of that. She's Miss Director, leader. She's very opinionated. Do you know what I mean? All those things. And I'm like, okay, so conversations with her.
Serve her well.
Yes. I'm like, okay, you can be directive and all those things. Those are going to serve you very well, like throughout your life. Can we come to a compromise and have an actual conversation about this topic right now?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I mean, she's going to just be incredible. I love watching y'all's family behind the scenes. And it's like, I'm like, those kids are going to be just fine.
Well, because she likes you. I think that would be the angle. I'll take her to Texas maybe and see you.
Okay, sounds good.
I did want to ask you just kind of some of your you mentioned the sleep study and all of that, but do you have any other like pro tips or action things that we can do at home? I know that you're a fan of the intake strips, which are you can probably describe these way better than me. I found them because I follow Dr. Hale, and you posted about these, and they're little metal strips in here, and you attach it, basically to your nose, and it just opens it up and it stays on all.
Yes. Yeah, most people recognize the name Breathe Right nasal strip just from forever. Yes. And I tell them this is like a Breathe Right strip on crack. Yes. I'm like, this is the best nasal dilator. I get sent lots of products, which is so fun. I'm not a huge fan of the intranasal ones, but people love them. Just personally, like I preferred something on the outside. Yeah. And I work out in these. I've done clips of me doing more weights and stuff when I'm wearing that. Okay. I do pull-ups. I'm proud of the fact that I do pull-ups. And I would, in the beginning, see stars sometimes because I think I would hold my breath at some point of that pull-up. Yeah. And as I was building myself up, I started wearing those during pull-ups, and I had absolutely no stars because you're going to get more air in through your nose. So they're great. They're obviously they were made for athletes, actually. I know the company. I've been working with them for a little bit because I've told them many times we need a pediatric line together, but they actually do have really small ones. So I am recommending the S1 and S2 for kids.
Okay.
Whether they know I'm recommending that or not, I have no idea, but they're really little. So one of the videos on my Instagram, that it was my daughter and I using them because she had a cold, and I was like, oh, you're going to love this. So I got her, I think the S2, and it's a little video of me putting it on, and you just see her little nose open up, and she's 8. She's about to be 8. So she's really little. But those are the intake strips are a definite hack. I saw a patient last week who, surprisingly, I was not jumping into any sort of oral appliance or expansion. I said, I really think you can manage this at home. I want you to try a couple of things for a month. And if you aren't feeling better, 100%, I'll make you something. But I just want to see if this is something that you could do that's low cost and really effective. And the intake strips were definitely at the top of that list. I'm like writing things down for her, the things I want her to buy. And the other is just doing nasal rinses, like actually take the time to do nasal hygiene. In
Okay.
kids, we use the X Clear brand. I think they call it Xlear. It's a
Yeah.
xylitol saline mixer,
Mhm.
super popular company. And so we are constantly giving those out to patients for them to start thinking about nasal hygiene, because that's just like we think about oral hygiene or like body hygiene, but you're not thinking about cleaning your nose every night. But for adults, like for me personally, the sprays are great, but I really love an actual nasal like lavage, like the Neil's Med rinses. They've been around forever. They're very cheap, are fantastic.
Okay.
And you just have to use like obviously like distilled water or boiled water in the tube, and you just gently lean over the sink and really, I mean, it's just we don't think about it, and you need to clean your sinuses. You really do.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
really good to know.
The other thing that people ask me about is lip tape. That comes up a lot. Like, am I a
Okay.
fan of
Yeah.
taping?
What do you think of
Should
that?
we lip tape? I'm a huge fan of lip taping if you know that you don't have sleep apnea. Okay.
Okay.
Like if you know you
Okay.
don't have at least moderate or severe sleep apnea. So lip taping was another thing that I had recommended to her because her apnea score was very low, like almost not a problem. So I was like, this would be great because you're going to start stimulating nasal breathing again for your body, which is really important because you aren't doing that like you should. So in the combination of like opening the nose, cleaning the nose, and then taping, you should get better sleep at night. But I do warn people that just doing it willy nilly, throwing it on your husband like hostage tape because he's snoring, I can't get behind that because I'm like, he actually really might need to breathe through his
Right.
mouth. So
Right.
let's just like not kill our spouse, at the same
Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Necessary to them, like actually living.
100%.
Yes. Oh, gosh. I had a deviated septum repaired earlier this year.
Oh,
And
good
that
for you.
Yeah, and so did actually my husband Josh. Oh my gosh, Callie, sometimes I do things. I'm like, what was I thinking? I think I thought it was just like easy, minor, nothing
Oh,
surgery. And we went within a week of each other. A week.
oh,
So the
oh my
timing, I
God.
would not suggest that. Looking back, it
Yes.
was the most stressful month. And I actually originally talked with the doctor and I was like, can we just have these done at the same time? Like I'll go first and he'll go. And he said, and I go, well, my son, at the time he was like, he's 17, he could take care of things. Oh, and so he convinced us to at least not do that. So,
Oh my
anyways,
gosh, good.
I know. I mean, like it's an actual legit, like you need to
It
take
is.
some time, to heal and recover, and you're not just bouncing. At least I wasn't bouncing back in a couple days. I
Right.
needed more time, but I'm so happy. It definitely did help. My breathing and
Good.
airway, yes. But the intake strips, I think, just even elevate it more. So I really enjoyed it.
Yes. It's funny because I think those surgeries are so important if you make it to adulthood with a deviated septum. Like whatever you can do to make sure the air comes in through your nose and down into your lungs is vital. But I tell people like it's no small feat, like what you went through. But
Yes.
some ENTs that I work with have told me literally we cannot compete with intake breathing.
Hmm.
Like what people want, that
Yes.
the intake, because of the soft tissue, it's your
Yeah.
skin and stuff,
Okay.
that's like they tell people like we will fix this, it will be better, but don't expect it to feel like a nasal dilator. That's what they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because even though I had it repaired, and it was mainly more on my right side, I still can go like this and just go, oh, I wish I had a little more.
Yeah.
So even
Which
when
hopefully that's what the strip is doing for you.
Yes, it does. I feel like it completely opens me up. And
Yeah.
so, okay, that's really cool. All right. Well, everybody, if you want more kind of pro tips like that, I would follow Callie on the airway centered dentist, excuse me, on Instagram. Her feed is amazing, full of so much informational stuff. And also her
Thank
nurse
you.
are really fun. So, and new.
No, thank you.
Okay, so I want to really move into part two of this conversation and talk about oxygen in the metaphoric way as it relates to our day to day. So, as I mentioned earlier, we talked about how so many people are living in this chronic state of stress. So, let's take a moment to define what stress is. And I'm in the middle of, I'm almost done reading this book. I don't know if you have,
I haven't, but I want
oh,
to.
girl,
Is it good?
it's
Okay, it'll be
so,
next. Yeah,
yes.
I'm reading Grit right now. Thought I had it
Oh,
next to me. I
yes.
could
Oh
show
my
you. I don't
gosh.
know if you've read Grit, but yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I have that right over there. That's like it's on my
Good.
list. I think actually I
Okay.
saw Dr. Summer Casmel. I think I was on her list, Grit, and I was like, I need to get that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So stress, it's a psychological state of the brain. It hijacks the functioning of the brain. Normally, our prefrontal cortex is in control. But then when we move into the chronic state of stress, our amygdala is like working overtime 24.
Yep.
So then, as you mentioned, we're in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, which is the exact same thing as a stress response. Meaning,
Totally.
yeah, and part of our brain has one job, and that's something that Mel Robbins talks about so brilliantly in this book. Um, the one job really is survival and self-preservation. So this being in a long-term state of chronic stress can lead to burnout and just potential breakdowns. And
Absolutely.
I know that that is a little bit a part of your story and your journey. And so, can you talk about your what happened, how you found yourself in a state of burnout, and what was that? What's
Yes, I would love to.
for you? Awesome.
It's like my favorite thing. It's crazy to me that when I allude sometimes to the fact that I almost wanted to quit practicing dentistry, and people are like, "Wait, what? You're like doing all these things?" But it can happen to anybody. And I get a ton of like, well, what did you do? What do you mean? And I do mentor dentists. I have a private mentorship group and we talk about burnout a lot. So, you get out of dental school, you have a tremendous amount of debt, and you've basically put your life on hold. So my husband and I were high school sweethearts. We have a really cute story. We went to college together, we did a master's together, and then we went to dental school together. And I was a few years ahead of him in dental school. And our entire 20s basically was school. And it was great, but there was a lot of sacrifice that happens when you see your friends graduate college and go off and get a job and start their life and have babies and things. And I remember having conversations with my dad about a group of friends that I was like, I mean, it just feels like they're so much farther ahead, whether it be financially or just like in life, and they're doing things and they're taking vacations, and here I am studying gross anatomy. And he was like, baby, it's going to pay off, don't you worry, just keep your nose to the grindstone, like it's gonna work. But there was a lot of sacrifice that happened. And then you get out of dental school, and my husband and I were like, okay, we need to start a family, because like if we're gonna have kids, my eggs are getting old, so like let's go ahead and have babies.
Yeah.
And we popped about like three kids, and back to back. They were born like 2 years apart, almost to the day, and they're the best. But in those periods of time, as a brand new dentist trying to establish rapport in your community, and I had that in spades, because I got to walk into a family practice, and then we opened a second family practice together. And I just had this confidence, even if it was fake, I don't even know, that, there was nothing I couldn't do that my parents couldn't get me out of, basically. My mom and dad, for those listening, I come from a family of dentists. So my parents are dentists, my sister's a dentist, my
Wow.
husband's a dentist, and then my other sister runs all the businesses. So it's just like a big family affair. And I dove into the practice just in a way that, looking back, I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't, but in a way that was probably like fairly unhealthy. Like, you show up if you're sick, we found an incredible nanny, and she basically raised our babies for the first, like, I don't know. I started less days per week going on almost 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So for the first definite 6, 8 years, she was just there constantly. And even she was probably burned out at one point, feeling like she couldn't take a day off, because we would never miss work. And there was a period there where I got really popular in our local community for my just difference. I was different. I didn't care if you wanted fluoride or not. I wanted to talk to you about it. I wanted to understand more about why you wouldn't want certain things in your body. I was the farthest thing from holistic when I got out of dental school. I mean, you're just mainstream. You get out of dental school and you're the hot shot in the town, and you know everything. And boy, do you not, like, really. And so it was just but I had the personality that I was just very open-minded. And I was absolutely believe I was put on this earth to help people. And I love teaching, and I love my patient interaction, just sitting with them chairside and figuring out how we can work together and problem solve. But as time went on, I got out of dental school in 2014. And by 2021, I was producing more dentistry than I could have ever imagined. I was speaking and gone a lot. I did an airway residency, and after that, it just like took off for me. And this is a very, very condensed version of this. But I just got to the point where in the practice, I was the only main doctor. I had help a little bit from my dad and from Kyle, but they basically did surgery. I was doing all this biologic dentistry, and I was starting to dabble in tooth pillows. But I was the end all be all for that place. Like, I knew every single thing that happened every single day with every single patient. And while in the moment I loved it, I made myself way too available to them. I would get messages about whitening on my Facebook and Messenger at like 10 o'clock that I legitimately felt the responsibility to reply to. Okay, which therein lies, you can already see where the problem is. Like, why would you ever think that you needed to talk to a patient like on your social media or whatever? But that is just what, in the beginning, as I was building the practice, I just felt like this is how you build, this is how you make it. And it did work, but it worked to the sacrifice of me getting to the point where my husband had me dealing with me like crying so often. And then we have little babies now, and it just like was so much to juggle. And I finally just got to the point where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And the practice was too small, for one. So this is 2020. We bought the building that our practice was in. And then the world shut down. That was really fun. And 2021, I was like, if you guys don't find me legitimate help, like I can't be sick. I can't miss a day. I can't go to any kid activities. There's nothing. I mean, moms are meeting for coffee in the strollers. Like, that's never going to happen. And I was okay with that, but it was just like, I could not be there. And that didn't bode well with me. It just got to the point where I was extremely burnt out. And my dad was actually the one that said burnout first. I didn't even know what that word was. And I was just venting to him about something. Who even knows? Like, he had to hear all my complaints about, everything. And he was like, you're burnt out. And of course, defensively, I'm like, what do you mean? No, I'm not. I am great. Like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it was wild. So I remember taking a spring break with my kids, and that was like crazy. And I remember we went to Destin, Florida in March, and it was freezing cold, but it didn't matter. We left and we're driving away. And I just remember I'm driving out of the house, and I just remember taking my phone. I gave it to Kyle. I was like, I don't want to hear from a single person at work. They better not call me, call somebody else. Like, and I just still remember in that moment being like, this break is so overdue. And I decided to Google burnout books. I just like literally on my phone, I was like, well, I don't know what this burnout thing is my dad's talking about, but I need to find help, which was the first time in my life that I was like, I need help. Like, I need to function. Like, how can people function like this? How can dentists stay in practice as long as my dad did? It's probably different, male to female a little bit, but like, it's rapidly changing. Like, the DSO is taking over, and you're a small business and you have to pay bills and all of the pressure. And I found a book called The 7E Solutions to Burnout. And I'm who I am today because I found that book. There's a lot of people that I can grant for like the fact that I'm still here practicing today. But that book took me out of the trenches. So the first thing I did was I cut a day of practice immediately. Kyle was like, you need a day to work on yourself. You need a day for admin. How about just get other things done? Like, for the family, for the house, like whatever it is you need to be done. And I cut Tuesdays. And suddenly I had a break in the rat race. And I could have a day where I woke up, my coffee journey was a little bit longer than the normal one, and I could just work on myself and start reading. Because and Kyle recognized that he has a lot of leadership training through DSN and all of this great stuff, and he was like, you need you time. And so Sharon Grossman wrote that book, and I am her biggest fan. I buy every single thing she puts out. That book was really big, and it took me a year to finish it because it was a workbook. So every Tuesday I took a chapter, and she would hold you accountable in that book. You need to write down, what are the 5 things right now that are killing you? And like, how are you going to overcome those? But one of the biggest things, Joanna, was recognizing what stress felt like. And how can you change your mindset in that moment of serious anxiety? Because if a patient was mad, oh my gosh, it would like sit with me. And unfortunately, my staff would tell me about it 3 days ahead of time. So then I'm sitting on it for 3 days, knowing I got to talk to somebody that's not, when it always worked out. Like, knock on all the wood, my patients really do appreciate my attention to them. And I'm like, okay. But in the moment, it feels like a grizzly bear is chasing you. And Dr. Grossman, I mean, she gives such real world experience. She has helped guys that are like CEOs of Fortune 500 companies walk them off the ledge, literally, like crazy stuff. And I realized that the power of your mind would change how you perceived everything that hit you that day.
Wow.
And our experiences can be so different. I can have a conversation with you and you perceive one thing and I perceive another, and it's no different from our patients. And so when I figured out how the fact that the thoughts I were having could be false, it was like a world opened up for me of just taking things as learning moments and not being so hard on myself and putting up some boundaries for what I would allow to hurt me and what I would allow to, clog my mind. She has something in there where she says you shouldn't allow the thing that happened or whatever's causing you the anxiety to last longer in your mind than it took for it to occur in the first place. Because we will take something that maybe took 2 minutes of our life and we're sitting on it for years sometimes. I mean, stuff can happen and you're like thinking about it for a really long time. So I credit all that stuff to her. She doesn't know who I am, although she's at a Zoom call coming up for a new book thing. And I'm like, I'm so going to be on this Zoom because she has no idea how much she helped me.
She needs to know who you are. She would probably
I
be
would
over the moon to hear how her work has helped you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I should. You're right, because it's nice to get fun emails like that and I could email her or something. But yeah, she's come out with a couple of different things. Her newest book that I'm reading right now is Motivated to Stay, and it's for employees. It's for the leaders of the organizations to figure out how to hire the right people and how to motivate them to stay, because the cost of replacement is so high. The cost for me to replace a dentist is unimaginable, but even just the cost of your hygienists, your assistants, your front desk team, the loss of productivity that happens. Anyway, so I'm in the thick of that book with her right now too, and it's been great. So yeah, I read that and I slowly started implementing it. I put up boundaries. I decided that certain days of the week I was going to pick my kids up from school. So that was hard for my team. It was everything I decided to do to save myself was difficult on others because it made my availability less. And I leave at 3 every single day now, and I pick my kids up from school and on I go. And when you're doing a lot of pediatric care, people like to come after hours. And I have 2 incredible airway associates at my practice that will see the kids after those hours because they're young and they don't have kids yet and they're in a different stage in their life. But I just decided my week and my days were going to be exactly how I wanted them to be, and everything would still be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a condensed version. Sorry, I know that was really long, but it was a really transformative time in my life.
Goodness, that's just amazing. Thank you for being so vulnerable and like sharing that. I think,
of course,
because I think you're obviously on the other side of it. So you're able to like freely, you've done the work and that sounds like a lot of deep internal work.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I admire that. I know personally my own journey with chronic stress and the way that I perceive the world around me and show up in certain circumstances and with other people like you're talking about. It takes a lot of deep work to get on the other side of that. And I
Yes,
think in some ways I'm definitely a work in progress with that. So I have to mention this because it's similar to what you're talking about. So the whole let them theory, it's basically a similar mindset tool that helps teaches you to let other people make their choices and live their lives. And it helps us to stop, making it our job or responsibility to manage or control what other people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second part of that is she says, let me, and then we are fully empowered to choose our response, right? Do I need to freak out about this, or do I need to have this internal dialogue going on for weeks and weeks and weeks? What's the healthiest, best response for me, regardless of the circumstances or what other people are saying or what the patients are doing? So it's actually like liberating when you think about it. It's such a simple concept, but
it's freeing.
But how often do we actually practice it? You know what I mean?
Well, that's a really good point, because I think if somebody else would to read that book and maybe read it quickly, read it without maybe filling it out or whatever, you wouldn't have the same takeaway.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And then analyzing in the moment, which I'm a work in progress with it too. There are such natural um, instances where I will suddenly just I'll feel the adrenaline burst. I feel it.
Yeah.
And I love my team dearly, but sometimes they'll just come in and kind of take a poop on whatever the situation is. And I had to also realize that what was being told to me in my back office before I had to go and walk into the den, the lion's den, right? The
Yeah.
patient operatory, which
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating a bit, but when that does happen, I had to learn that actually now I'm getting a completely different version of like how they perceived it. And then they're sending it to me, which I may not have perceived that way had I just taken the initial intake from the patient myself of like what's going on.
Yeah.
And I had a really difficult, probably first in my career situation where I was talking with a patient that I realized really needed psychiatric care. And now I was trying to like fix something or do something on somebody that really wasn't mentally stable enough to have an opinion on it or really even like it was weird. And in the moment, I'm like, how did I miss this? Why did I ever take this case on? Had I, realized. And so when my assistant came and got me, she was panicking. She was over exaggerating. There was all sorts of stuff that were happening. And in that moment, I was like, this is where I get to practice what I learned because she talks about how to do that. As soon as you're feeling that anxiety, you can turn it into excitement, or you can literally tell yourself, whatever happens in the next 3 minutes, I'm gonna learn a lot. And it's probably not going to happen, like I'm going to
Yeah.
learn something from this. And so,
Yeah.
and Kyle, my husband is like so good at that kind of thing. Like if he had to fire somebody or he had to have a difficult conversation, he sort of just like pulled himself out of it and then just had the conversation and wanted to take away whatever he could learn so that he could do it better the next time. And so I went in, had our conversation, all was fine. Of course, in the back of my mind is everything that the patient didn't tell me that my assistant did or whatever, but everything was okay. And at the end of the day, I walked up to her, I said, do you like how all of that got handled? Like how I handled that in the moment. And she's like, I don't know how you did it. And so anyways, it's just practicing it, like you're saying, and recognizing it when it happens is really, really important. And that goes with anything. It doesn't have to be dentistry. I mean, like, yeah, a spouse that's mad at you or a kid or like some situation at school you have to go talk
Yeah.
to. Like
Yeah.
in that moment, what can I learn from this? How can I make sure it doesn't happen again? And like, how can we move on from it and don't let it eat you up
So
for
good.
days?
I mean, our default as mothers, especially, we are fixers. We are
Yes.
programmed from day one of having those kids. And I think even some of it is just DNA, right? Like how some of us are even wired. Because I've been this way forever. It's just how I'm, just high achieving, get it done. Like
Right.
nothing's gonna
Right.
stand in my way. So we're constantly problem solving. And if I think the tricky part is when the problems are people or their reactions
Right.
to us or our interactions or a conversation that has tension or disagreement, we just like internalize that. We act like everything's okay, but we are like
For
not.
sure.
And so,
100%.
yeah, I think we just absolutely to complement what you're saying, we can just truly step into our own power when we choose like our response is aligned with our values, our needs,
Mm-hmm.
our desires, when we're able to do that in a very prefrontal cortex way.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Which is difficult and it takes practice. So I'm like, practice it as much as you can,
Yes.
like I agree with you 100%. Yeah. So I really hope this helps other people when they're listening back to it because you you have one life. And I tell doctors this too. I'm like, what would make your week better? You don't want to do endo anymore? Refer every single root canal then. Like, who is stopping you from doing that? Like, and whatever barrier is there, let's recognize the actual true barrier to what it is, which is usually working on yourself, and then you'll be able to get past it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up, I have to ask you where your joy comes from, Kalli, because
Yeah.
I look at other women and often there are just women and people in life that exude joy. And sometimes I wonder, is that natural or is that a lot of deep work that you've done? to just be radiant like that. And so
Well, you're so sweet.
you are literally, and everyone that knows you thinks this, I can absolutely say that confidently. You walk in a room, your radiance is there. Where does that come from?
My dad and mom have told me that I came out of the womb talking and performing and wanting to be in front of people. So I do think there is a level of innateness to my wanting to just be in life. Like I just love life so much, but I don't think you can give all the credit to that once you start growing up, because I think there's a lot that can happen to people while they're growing up that can change that or dim that. And I have been extremely blessed to have the biggest cheerleader in a husband, the biggest cheerleader in my parents, and they pushed me in all the right ways to really like allow me to be myself. And my mom would joke that I'd be like singing in the grocery store, and she never wanted to tell, even though I'm sure she wanted to tell me not to, she never did for either of my sisters, because she was like never going to dim that light. Because you can tell your kid like, oh, be quiet, we don't act like that here or something, and then they can just like kind of turtle. And so whether it was the right way or not, it definitely impacted it. And for me, and I'm really, really grateful to them. And I also just have this perspective. My husband said I came out of the womb an adult. Like I just always followed the rules, and I have this perspective of making your days as good as they can. My mom always told me when I was little, you work hard now so that the rest of your life can be fun. I don't know how many times she told me that when I would be crying about a test in college or whatever. You're working hard now so the rest of your life can be fun. And she was absolutely right. So I love you and I love people. And even on our hard days, we need to recognize the wins in our life. And I do my best. I'm not perfect at it, but I do my best to recognize that. So you're a joy, Joanna, and I really appreciate you asking me that.
Well, if you guys ever get to hang out with Dr. Kalli Hale, you will know exactly what I mean by that. So you're
appreciate
a beautiful soul. Do you have any last words for this awesome group of women listening? Just anything on your heart?
Yeah, I would tell everybody listening that whatever you're going through right now, you will be okay. You've survived all of your hardest days. And I know that's kind of cheesy and we see that a lot online, but it's really true. And if you can take 30 minutes, 15 minutes to find a book like the Burnout book, if that's what you're experiencing, or Servant Leader, which I absolutely love that book, to kind of understand the way others tick, you will remove yourself from the hurt that you're letting yourself have, the access that they have to you, when you realize that everybody's really doing the best they can in their given situation. And I do live by that as well. An upset person, something else is going on in their life, probably not me, and that they're actually mad at. And I think it will give you a freedom and a liberty that you desperately need. So I wish that for everybody.
I love that. That's beautiful. So let's see. For more insights, I definitely want all of you to follow Dr. Kalli Hale again on Instagram. I'll include this in the show notes, of course, but it's the Airway Centered Dentist. And thank you, Kalli, for being my guest. This was just a beautiful conversation, and I love talking about it in a metaphoric way, but also a really physical, practical way, the importance of oxygen and breathing. So you're the best.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joanna.
Okay, Story Project podcast audience, let's be fearless together, ladies, this week, and we'll see you next time.